Greetings, my name is John Balliett. This is the first of a two-part presentation about our shoreline at Linwood Park, a very special summer resort on the south shores of Lake Erie in Vermilion, Ohio. Yeah, that's me in the tub with my older sister Mim watching over. To begin, Lake Erie is fed on the west by three much larger lakes, Superior, Michigan, and Huron, through the Detroit River and drained over Niagara Falls in the east. This lake depth profile slide shows just how much deeper the other lakes are when compared to Erie. Erie has three distinct basins: the very shallow western 20% of her surface area, with its islands, beaches, and sport fishing, the central 50% of her surface area, and the much deeper 30% in the eastern basin. The underwater ridge between Lorain, Ohio and Pelee Point, Ontario is commonly viewed as the boundary between Erie's central and western basins. 5 miles to our west is the southernmost surface water point on the Great Lakes. Army Corps of Engineer archives are easily accessible, and their 6-pager on Lake Erie is a must-read for anyone seeking info about what influences her water levels. The Corps tracks water levels on a daily basis and publishes a monthly newsletter comparing the lake's surface height above sea level against the highest and lowest marks ever recorded. I know you can't read this page. Our best information resource is ODNR, Ohio Department of Natural Resources. They offer volumes of free information about Erie and her shoreline. This 1966 postcard shows our park's eastern position along a delicate beach shared with our neighbors to the west, the Vermilion Lagoons. In 1876, the Army Corps began mapping and measuring water depths in the Vermilion River Basin. At that time, the marshy lagoons were properly named. A group of German evangelical ministers founded Linwood Park in 1884. They platted building lots for leasing and identified our future neighbor's Portage Drive as a swampy cove. 45 to 50 years later, a developer created a beautiful network of canals for waterfront homes and boat dockage, but the name Lagoons remains. This pirated slide from a National Geographic magazine shows how small Lake Erie's water volume is when compared to the other 4 Great Lakes. Mother Nature uses waves to constantly erode a shoreline that isn't protected by a beach. The surface water on shallow lakes is very prone to wind tides when storms push hard from the same direction for several hours. The French word sèche means an oscillation of water on a lake caused by atmospheric pressure and wind. Song lyrics once read, "The rain is Tess, the fire is Joe, and they call the wind Mariah." Here we call the wind nor'easter, the storm tide sèche, and we call the shrubbery Irving. Waves are both friend and foe. They're quite fickle and not to be trusted. They bring in sand and beach materials and then rapidly take them back. Shale cliffs are a lot like waves. They give the lake material to chew up into sand and then intensify literal water flow when storm waves want to attack your beach. You also need to know that the state of Ohio assumes ownership of any private property lost into Lake Erie. Ohio Revised Code Section 1506 is hard to argue with. Therefore, it's best to store up and keep as much sandy real estate as you possibly can, because once it's lost from your shoreline ecosystem, erosion protection with rocks and concrete becomes very expensive. Without a beach, erosion control is challenging. A proper study of the structural property protection methods should include much more than a cost-benefits analysis. what works along one shoreline might fail badly in another location. This goofy-lined slide shows where a freak July 4th, 1969 storm dumped up to 14 inches of rain right on top of us. The Vermilion River peaked at 13 feet above flood stage and damaged all of the beautiful homes in the lagoons. July 69 lake levels were normal. Still, the river blew out our west side beach from the south and climbed 2/3 of the way up our bluff toward the cottages. I wish I had an aerial photo to share. The muddy river flow contrasted with the blue lake waters, and its currents could still be seen by neighbors 5 miles east from us. In late June of 1972, we experienced our own Superstorm Sandy, when Hurricane Agnes spin-off storms roared through Pennsylvania and into Lake Erie. Extreme low atmospheric pressure and extreme high June water levels had waves attacking our bluff along its entire 2,200-foot width. Storm damage was severe. A Wikipedia entry notes that waves on Lake Erie reached 15 feet in height, and the Seiche was 42 inches. This photo shows our property line with Nokomis. With the depth of our beach so diminished by the Hurricane Agnes spin-off storms, this spring 1973 photo shows that winter waves pushed logs and driftwood all the way to the bluff on the west side. In the distance, and from our eastern property line, a west-facing spring 1973 photo shows that our trees on the beach are still healthy. In 1971, the Army Corps of Engineers determined that a detached break wall was needed across the mouth of the Vermilion River in order to create a harbor. Construction began in late July of 1973, and it has affected our shoreline ever since. Thank you for watching part 1 of my presentation. Please consider joining me for part 2, a story about how our community has come together in an effort to maintain our precious Linwood Beach.